In the beginning, man created God, and in the image of man created he him. And man gave unto God a multitude of names, that he might be Lord over all the earth when it was suited to man. And on the 7 millionth day man rested, and did lean heavily on his God, and saw that it was good. And man formed Aqualung of the dust of the ground, and a host of others likened unto his kind. And these lesser men man did cast into the void, and some were burned, and some were put apart from their kind. And man became the God that he created, and with his miracles did rule over all the earth. And as these things did come to pass, the spirit that did cause man to create his God lived on within all men, even within Aqualung. And man sought not, but for Christ's sake, he'd better start looking. That was weird. Anyway, welcome to Album Essentials. My name is Anderson Zello, and I must ask this question. Who is Jethro Tull? When mentioning Jethro Tull to someone who may not be that knowledgeable in music, they may think that they are a musician of some sort. Some may realize that Jethro Tull was the inventor of the seed drill, which is an important farming invention. The person you are talking to may assume that the band's frontman is called Jethro Tull and adapted that as a stage name. But they'd be wrong. Jethro Tull is not the name of any of the band's members. How did they get such a name for the band? We'll get to that later. The band's name being mistaken for the group's main member, Ian Anderson, is the #1 pet peeve involving their legacy. The second pet peeve is having Aqualung being considered a concept album.
Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent. Snot running down.
Aqualung is the fourth studio album by Jethro Tull and was released on March 19, 1971 and was well received by contemporary critics. It is ranked 337 on the Rolling Stone list of 500 greatest albums, but part of the reason for its inclusion is due to what genre of rock the album is. There are many kinds of rock music. Rock and roll, heavy metal, jazz rock, punk rock, progressive rock, avant-garde, post-punk, classical jazz, country, soul, amongst many, many others. Aqualung is firmly planted to the genres of progressive rock, but also has elements of folk rock and hard rock. Progressive rock is considered by some purists to be one of the more pretentious types of rock music, and its attempts to be taken more seriously. The only progressive rock band to be universally praised is Pink Floyd, but even they got the ire of rock critics. But we're not here to talk about Pink Floyd, we're here to talk about why Aqualung deserves to be considered an album essential. Ian Anderson, Jeffrey Hammond, and John Evan attended grammar school together. British grammar school is equivalent to American middle school. Evans knew how to play the piano but decided to take up the drums. Anderson, not me of course, eventually got himself a Spanish guitar and Hammond joined the two as a bassist. Evans eventually transferred to the organ with Barry Barlow taking over as drums. Mike Stevens from the band The Atlantics also joined the group. In 1964, Chris Riley joined as a guitarist and 6 members originally called themselves the John Evan Band, then the John Evan Smash, and performed blue-eyed soul music like that of Righteous Brothers and Hall & Oates. Hammond eventually quit the band to go to art school and was ultimately replaced by Glenn Cornick. Riley also eventually quit and was replaced by Neil Smith. In 1967, the band moved to London. Smith was replaced by Mick Abrams, but the 6 members suddenly realized that having 6 members was an economic mess, so the band broke up. And we're not even talking about Jethro Tull yet! Anderson, again, not me, Cornick, and Abrams decided to stay together and hired Clive Bunker to play drums. The band that would be Jethro Tull finally formed on December 20th, 1967. When eventually getting gigs, the band was called such varied names such as Navy Blue, Ian Henderson's Bag of Nails, and Candy Colored Rain. And you thought hipster bands had such pretentious names. The name Jethro Tull eventually stuck as it was used the first time a club manager invited the band to return to perform again. Ian Anderson has been on the record saying many times that he's not a fan of the band's name. At the time, Anderson, not to be confused with me again, was living in what is known as a cold bedsit, which is much like a boarding house. He purchased himself a large overcoat to stay warm and bought his flute around this time. His decision to play the flute was due to the fact he couldn't play guitar as well as the other members of the band, and for the fact that a flute is incredibly easy to carry around. The group's first big break was at the National Jazz and Blues Festival on Sunbury-on-Thames in August of 1968. The first album, This Was released in October of that year and placed 10 in the charts. After this album, Abrams left the band to form Bloodwind Pig. He was replaced by Martin Barre. The next album, Stand Up, was released the next year. It reached number 1 in the UK charts and the band had their first tour in the United States. The band was actually invited to perform at Woodstock, but they declined because they didn't want to be associated with hippie music. Evan was at music school at this time, and Anderson, to remind you, not me, invited him to play as a session musician for the next album, Benefit, and was also asked to be the tour keyboardist too. Evan's music tutor persuaded him to join the band and perform with Jethro Tull at the 1970 Isle of Wight Festival. After the festival, Cornick decided to form his own band and called it Wild Turkey. Not to be confused with this stuff. Still not used to the taste. Hammond was invited to come back, and the lineup of Barr, Hammond, Evan, Bunker, and Anderson, not me, would then record Aqualung from December of 1970 to February of 1971. The title track is rough, loud, and known for its iconic 6-note riff that opens up the album.
Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent.
The name of the track, Aqualung, derives itself from the name of the first open circuit, self-contained, underwater, breathing apparatus to gain popularity. In other words, it was the first popular scuba device. In this song, however, it refers to the nickname the singer gives to the titular homeless and befriended man in the song, Aqualung. The reason the homeless man is called Aqualung is due to the sound of his breathing.
Hey, you snatch your rattling last breaths with deep sea diver sounds,
And then you think to yourself,
I can't breathe in this thing!
throughout the song, he goes to a park, finds a cigarette stub called a dog end, which I always thought referred to a canine's rear, and encounters some homeless assistance group. The song was inspired by Ian Anderson walking through London with his then wife and seeing a homeless man. It is one of the very few Jethro Tull songs that is credited to someone other than Anderson. Once again, not me. About the song, Ian Anderson said, "I had feelings of guilt about the homeless, as well as the fear and insecurity with people like that who seem a little scary. And I suppose all of that was combined with a slightly romanticized picture of a person who is homeless but yet a free spirit, who either won't or can't join in society's prescribed formats." In the 33 and the 3 book on this album by Alan Moore, this song, and many others, can be have the format described like a pun.
No, not a pun. No, what's the other thing which reads the same backwards as forwards?
A palindrome?
Yeah.
There's the intro,
sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent.
the second part, which sounds distant and pitying,
Sun streaking cold, an old man wandering lonely, taking time the only way he knows.
the third part,
Do you still remember a December's foggy freeze, when the ice that clings onto your beard was screaming agony?
the fourth, which is louder and more compassionate,
Sun streaking cold, an old man wandering lonely, taking time the only way he knows.
and the reprise.
Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent.
The track mixes hard rock with gentle melodies, starting loud, calming, building up, and returning to the original loudness. I should also note that Ian Anderson performs acoustic guitar on the track, but the song features none of his iconic flute playing. We'll get to that now. Hard rock and flute music tend not to be thought of in the same sentence, don't they? Christ Mary begins with what sounds like the build-up of a parade for a Renaissance fair with a dark and modern undertone with a hint of a bass guitar before serving us with a helping of rock.
Oh, would be a poor man, a beggar man, a thief, if he had a rich man in his hand.
While Anderson, again, not me, says that this album is not a concept album, this song does little to dissuade such insinuations as Aqualung gets a name drop in this track.
Or maybe her attention is drawn by Aqualung, who watches through the railings as they play.
Now the story of the song is a bit irksome as it's about a student prostitute who prefers older men than to people of her age. Yeah.
With a poor man's rich girl, then she'll go and press on.
There's also the mention of a jackknife barber who is someone who performs illegal abortions, signaling that Cross-Eyed Mary is a little bit uncareful about her promiscuity. The next track is more of a vignette than the full song. It sounds like a produced version of something you might hear a busker on the London Underground play as you wait for your train. The track is not bad, but not overly special. It acts more like a transition to the next song, Mother Goose. Yet another song that musically sounds like a Renaissance fair. It is, however, nevertheless, rock. It details the observations of a young man walking through a Hampstead Summer Festival and their encounters.
And a foreign student said to me, was it really true? There are elephants and lions too in Piccadilly Circus.
It's a crowded roundabout in London. It's also incredibly tiny.
I know because I was there.
The rock creeps in during the later parts of the song, with electric guitar creeping in, possibly corrupting the apparent innocence within the song and situation.
Wondering aloud how we feel today.
Wondering Aloud is another vignette song, which is a musical memory which starts as an acoustic guitar track before gaining violins and the piano to wax the nostalgic tone of the song. It's actually hard to argue this song as rock, as it's not really loud and, for lack of a better term, rocking. The final track on the first side of the vinyl release, Up to Me, sounds like a rather chaotic, and most likely unsuccessful, set of dates for the person or a multitude of people.
I take it to the cinema and leave you in a wimpy bar. You tell me that we've gone too far, come running up to me. Make the scene at Cousin Jack's, leave him to put the bottles back. Mends his glasses that are cracked, well that's one up to me.
Medieval/Renaissance instrumentation continues with its accentuations of electric and bass guitars that contribute towards the ideas of a darker undertone of the actions of various characters in this concept album story that doesn't exist. The second half of the album is My God and showcases Ian Anderson's view on religious figures. It starts with a slow and intimidating guitar that's joined by piano before a strike of electric guitar.
So lean upon him gently and don't call on him to save. You from your social graces, whoa, and the sins you're used to wave. You used to wave. The bloody Church of England in chains of history.
an angry song, and not against religion as a concept, but rather how figures of religion are treated. The title is less of a descriptor like "my God," and more of an exclamation like "my God!" Near the end, there's a section of Gregorian chanting sung by Anderson while he plays his flute. That, my friend, is presented by the grace of God, or the modern miracle of music production. Hymn 43 is a rocking blues song with flute that Anderson, not me, describes as a blues for Jesus about the gory glory seekers who use his name as an excuse for a lot of unsavory things. You know, hey Dad, it's not my fault. The missionaries lied.
And the unsung western hero, he killed an Indian or three, and then he made his name in Hollywood to set the white man free. Jesus saved me. Well, the lies, separation, and falls you.
Slipstream is the final vignette song on the album and the only one on the My God side that is in the style of the other vignette songs. I feel that the slipstream of the title refers to a religious follower being washed away from the chaos of modern religion. The penultimate song on the second side is Locomotive Breath and is just as famous as Aqualung and Cross-Eyed Mary on the other side. It starts with a light piano piece, almost sad and pondering, before it literally starts to pick up speed. About the song, Ian Anderson said, "It was my first song that was perhaps on a topic that would be a little more appropriate to today's world. It was about the runaway train of population growth and capitalism. It was based on those sorts of unstoppable ideas. We're on this crazy train, we can't get off it." I'm guessing that Ozzy Osbourne took more than a few notes from this track. I used to always think that this song was about sex, an unfaithful relationship done on a train.
Sees his children jumping off the stations one by one. His woman and his best friend in bed and having fun.
However, with this new revelation from Anderson, the idea of the train of industry with people being dragged along for the ride that refuses to stop makes just as much sense to me.
Oh, it's calling down the corridor on his hands and knees. Oh, Charlie stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No, it should slow down.
And to continue the concept album debate, the song pulls a religious straw by mentioning Gideon's Bible.
Oh, it picks up Gideon's Bible, open at page 1. I thank God it stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No, it should slow down.
I think that such a small mention indicates that it's such a threadbare argument to connect the songs thematically. The final song, Wind Up, is another analysis of religion that combats religious teaching against the insistence on a personalized view of God.
And I asked this God a question, and by way of firm reply, he said, I'm not the kind you have to wind up on Sundays. So to my old headmaster and to anyone who cares, before I'm through, I'd like to say my prayers. I don't believe you had the whole damn thing all wrong.
Then the rock really picks up and starts to match the singer's rage, saying that the others are being suppressed by the fear and lack of guts to think for themselves.
I'd rather look around me, compose a better song, 'cause that's the honest measure of my worth. In your pomp and all your glory, you're a poorer man than me, as you lick the boots of death, born out of fear.
The song then continues by repeating previous points, aka verses, with a more rageful instrumentation before calming down. So once the musical sermon was complete, what did people think of its messages? Aqualung reached number 4 on the UK album charts while peaking at number 7 on the Billboard Pop chart. The song Hymn 43 was released as a single and hit 91 on the Hot 100. I honestly can't imagine why. 2 of the songs that were the most remembered, Aqualung and Cross-Eyed Mary, were not released as singles. This is probably due to their length, a staple of prog rock songs. Locomotive Breath got a single, albeit without its piano intro and censored in some regions. I tried my hardest to find an actual version of this particular censored version, but I couldn't find it, so I made a simulated version.
And the all-time winner has got him by the fun.
Ben Gerson and Rolling Stone praised the musicianship of the album, but thought the seriousness undercut the album's quality. The Village Voice ranked the album the 22nd best album of 1971. 1971 would be the year where prog rock would get its foothold, with Pink Floyd's Metal and the Yes album being released the same year as Aqualung. Albums such as Sgt. Pepper's and Pep Sounds opened the door for experimentation in the 70s with battle alongside punk and disco for musical attention throughout the rest of the decade. A number of critics called Aqualung a concept album, which ended up surprising Anderson. It's easy to think of the album as a concept album as it has recurring motifs and 2 distinct sides with 2 distinct themes. Out of frustration of such inconsistencies from critics, Ian Anderson then decided to release a concept album that top all other concept albums. The ultimate, overblown, overproduced, and overwrought orchestration that would be so ostentatious that critics and casual listeners would not realize that the whole thing was an elaborate take that at the idea of the concept album. That's what happens when you don't make your satire obvious and your listener base matches the title of your composition.
I may make you feel that I can't. Sitting on the park bench.
Aqualung is like walking from the peak of one mountain to another in a fantasy story. 2 powerful and emotional peaks at the opposite sides of the track list, 2 fondly remembered tracks to complement them, then easier tracks to lead them to a hard rocking middle. However, it's an album that I don't necessarily listen to all the way through, with Cross-Eyed Mary, Locomotive Breath, and the title track really the songs I look at the most fondly. My God, Hymn 43 and Wind Up are strongly worded songs with intense instrumentation that are good in their own right, but aren't necessarily for the listener who doesn't want to think about their rock music. But then again, it's called progressive rock for a reason. Jethro Tull has had a long and varied career with highs, lows, and plateaus, but Aqualung is definitely their best album with more than one song. There is an argument to be made of whether or not their one-song opus is better than Aqualung, but since Thick as a Brick is so hard to swallow and this album gives you time to breathe between the rock and the vignettes, Aqualung is the better of the 2 albums in my book.
Lonely, taking time, the only way he knows.
Ian Anderson has been on the record many times and says that it's not been the Thanks, my camera, for not interpreting a perfectly good take. Take 2. The decision to play the guitar was due to the fact that he couldn't play the guitar as well as the other members, and also for the fact that his decision to play the flute was due to the fact that he couldn't play guitar as well as the other members of the band, and for the shoe fact that a flute is incredibly easy to fact. I also said shoe fact. Not for a shoe fact. These 3 flip-flops have a bottle opener on the bottom. I'm not sponsored. I'm not that big on YouTube. This is a gift. This is a gift I got for Dad when I was in New Hampshire because they don't have taxes on liquor. They don't have any sales tax. The things I do for videos. Ow, it hurts. You might think I'm crazy. Well, you're quite correct. 2 of the songs that were most remembered, Aqualung and Cross-Eyed Mary, were not released as singles, probably due to low length, a staple of prog rock songs. While Locomotive Breath got a single, albeit without its piano intro and censored in some regions. That was a train wreck of a read. Oh boy. My God, Hymn 43, and wind up a strongly worded songs with intense instrumentation are good in their own right, but are necessary for the listener who wants to think about it, who doesn't want to think the ba. You won't.